policies. We can't control family libraries. We can't control the Latino Bookstore. And that's what's going on right here. We're going to make sure to keep flooding these book deserts with books by our gente and culture. So, well, thank you very much. All right, so that was the warm-up back. That was the warm-up back to myself. So now we're going to start the official live stream, and we are live right now through the magic of the internet. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Latino Bookstore Texas Author Series. We are broadcasting live from the Westside of San Antonio at the Latino Bookstore at the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center. And if you've got your phone out, you can share this from the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center Facebook page, also the Nuestra Palabra Facebook page. We hope you will share that with your comadres, your compadres, y que les dé envidia. They'll be like, I didn't know that was going on. Additionally, I want to give Rodrigo Bravo a round of applause. He is our sound engineer. This broadcast will also air on fox26houston.com. The edited audio will appear on 90.1 FM KPFT. So this will air at 100,000 watts in the fourth largest city in America. And we will also make a podcast out of this that we'll share on Spotify so that this way you can text it to other folks, teachers. And if folks tune in and they miss the live reading, they know they can come any day during the week, during business hours, and pick up some of these wonderful books, signed copies. And every second Friday of the month, they can come and enjoy a brilliant reading. And in a little bit, we're going to have a wonderful live presentation from John Olivares Espinoza, the Date Fruit Elegies. And also, we've got Norma Cantu with us, and she'll be sharing some of the works with some of the contributors from CHICANA Portraits. This is going to be a powerful book for all education institutions, so thank you. And I do want to mention some of the upcoming events as I tell you one special announcement. The second Friday of November, which also coincides with the weekend of the Texas Book Festival, we're working with Macri, and we're happy to be bringing Dr. Jesus Jesse Esparza, whose book is called Raza Schools, The Fight for Latino Educational Autonomy in a West Texas Border Town, in conjunction with the Mexican-American Civil Rights Institute, Macri, and then also Alma Garcia with her novel, All That Rises, a novel from Camino del Sol Awards. Second Friday of December, the last event on the Texas Author Series for 2023, in conjunction with the exhibit, with the amazing exhibit, we have Monica Munoz Martinez, who won a Genius MacArthur Fellowship. ¿Verdad? She's coming. Her book is called The Injustice Never Leaves You, and Mexican-American Violence in Texas. Also with the director of the Mexican-American Studies program for the University of Texas, John Moran Gonzalez, who's be talking about his anthology, The Cambridge History of Latino American Literature. This is in conjunction with the exhibit, Refusing to Forget. This is the first time this exhibit is shown at a cultural center. So not only will you have this amazing exhibit, you're going to have the books that have fueled it, and you're going to have two of the scholars and writers in this room. That's what we want you to expect from now on, por favor. And I do want to give time to celebrate our second birthday. We are 2 years old today. The bookstore opened in October of 2021. Y'all remember the pandemic? ¿Se acuerdan? We were opening right around that time. And right now, I'm going to give three of the highlights that I remember. We're going to call up our director, Cristina Bailly, to remember three of hers. But I want people to understand, 2 years ago, in the west side of San Antonio, there was no Latino bookstore. That meant that there were no formal Latino bookstores in Texas. I do not want to slight my friends at Resistencia, at Casa Ramirez. I do not mean to slight them. They need to be supported. They need to be supported so that they are open every day of the week, so that they have staff, they can call themselves a bookstore, and they can dedicate themselves to that. That's the obstacles they've had to defy. This is the place that can do that. Having said that, we are here and we can celebrate these events. Here are three things that for me have been pivotal. The late Dr. Roberto Rodriguez, 1 year ago, launched his book, which would wind up being the last book he published before he passed away. What does that mean? That means you are part of this amazing legacy. The book is here. We have the archived history when he was here, and we have to embrace all of that because we're making history, saving history, and it can go away. Why? Because of time, because of policies, because of neglect. That to me was a very powerful moment. Additionally, we want to thank Congressman Joaquin Castro, who through a grant has helped create curriculum guides, including for Carmen's book, Warrior Girl. Thank you for coming tonight, Carmen. She's not in the spotlight. She's here supporting. Well, actually, you're in here. So thank you for coming. But that is an example of one of the curriculum guides that we've been able to contract and then support school visits and then donate books to those schools as well. And then I think for me, the other amazing thing coming up will be in December, where we have the Refusing to Forget national exhibit coming to a cultural center, because usually cultural centers don't have the capacity to support that. And we do, but we can bring the books to the table. On that note, I do want to bring up the visionary who in this empty space saw a bookstore, and it has come to light, and it is booming after 2 years. Please welcome the director of the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center, Cristina Bailly, who will share her thoughts on our history.
Thank you, Tony. Tony le pone mucha crema a los tacos. Tony, thank you. But I appreciate it. Thank you. I just want to welcome all of you quickly, and we'll get through this quick because we came to listen to authors. I'm very happy to have two good friends of the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center and the Latino Bookstore with John Espinoza, who has been here supporting us for quite a while already. So we know now that if we need something, we can call on him, at any moment to help us out. And then, of course, a dear, dear friend of the Guadalupe is Dr. Norma Cantu. She has been supportive in so many ways, with literature, with folklore programs that we've done. She hosted last year a beautiful national conference on ballet folklórico. That was just a beautiful event. I think it was the first of its kind, and of course many other programs that you have done, and you have always been very supportive of the Guadalupe. We sincerely appreciate it. So muchas gracias. And like Tony said, some of the things that stand out with the bookstore. When I got here, the Guadalupe was already getting ready to renovate this building with bond funding from 2012, and that was something like $835,000. And so we did the first phase of the renovation, which was the first half of the building and the exterior. And then in 2017, we got another $450,000 to finish out the rest of it. We still have to finish the upstairs. That's going to be administrative offices. So this is still a work in progress. You may know that the Guadalupe is doing a campus master plan. We are working with an architecture firm to decide what we're going to do with all our 9 properties that we own and manage right here on Brazos Street, to envision the rest of the Guadalupe and what all that's going to be. We have a lot of properties that people don't know because right now they're pretty much just dilapidated buildings, but we hope to do something thoughtful with them. And then, in case you don't know, I keep repeating this, but we are closing the Guadalupe Theater. Tonight is the last dance show in this version of the Guadalupe Theater because we will be renovating it. We have an initial $3.5 million to renovate the theater. And this is going to be maybe about a 2-year process. So we're going to be without a theater. The Guadalupe is still putting on programs. Our Guadalupe Dance Company is still going to be producing programs. We're going to be traveling them. So just stay tuned to hear what's going to be coming up. And then, like Tony was saying, today's the birthday of the bookstore. And we inaugurated it, opened it 2 years ago, and that was a big highlight. It was a beautiful event. One of the highlights also was we had a madrina and a padrino, and that was the dear Dr. Tomás Ibarra Frausto and our dear friend Carmen Tafoya. They were, nos empadrinaron y, se dice enmadrinaron, no, ¿verdad que no? But we had a padrino and a madrina, to bless us, to bless this work for all of us, and by all of us and for all of us. So that was a very special day. And of course, just knowing that we've been able to have the consistency of the author readings every month, and now expanding that with curriculum guides. So that's all I'm going to say. Oh, just one last thing, that we do have a show tonight with the Guadalupe Dance Company. It's not your traditional ballet folklorico show. This is actually a little bit more of a fusion, modern, and traditional dance, interpreting the stories of some of our most beloved cultural and civic leaders. These are vignettes and stories about Emma Tenayuca, Jovita de Hidar, who just came out in a quarter from Laredo, Jovita de Hidar, Lidia Mendoza, Américo Paredes, and Willie Velázquez. So this show is at 8. There's plenty of time to hear the authors here and then go on over to the theater and watch the show. There's still tickets available, so go enjoy the show. Probably the last show in this version of the theater. So ya no se va a ver así. So it's going to be new and improved when we open it up again. So thank you for being here, and we'll enjoy the readings now. Okay.
Thanks a lot. Someone texted me that I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Tony Diaz, a Librotraficante. I'm the author of The Tip of the Pyramid, Cultivating Community Culture Capital. And I can come and I can preach. Why? Because I'm surrounded by some cool writers, because they're about to thrill you. So I give you the fire and brimstone. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for some amazing poetry? See or no? All right. Oh, man. The first presenter is a wonderful poet who I admire for many reasons. He is a poetry coach for folks like Sandra Cisneros. He's taken other folks' poetry as well to work on that. Additionally, what I really admire, besides his fantastic gift of words, is his support of the community, because he's been on this side of the spotlight so many times supporting other writers. It really is wonderful to celebrate his recognition from the city, his book, and additionally, this is my copy though, so I bought the first one. I encourage all of you to buy your own copy for your family library and to donate to your favorite underground library or public library, because you will then also get this broadside from his new collection, English as a Second Language. And that title speaks to the volumes of his play on words. Please welcome, reading from the Date Fruit Elegies and his new work, John Olivares Espinoza.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. For those of you who know me, know that I much prefer to be in those seats than back here, but I am here. Primary reason I am here is because I was awarded a grant from the city. I am a 2003 City of San Antonio Project Artist Grant recipient, and I am here to present the project I was given funding for. But because I was billed, well, essentially I'm up here because, the things we'll do for money. So I have a checklist, save joke. So I am here because, I was billed as reading this. Oh, yeah, thank you. I always think I'm like 6'1", but I'm not. I am going to start off by reading 3 poems from the Date Fruit Elegies. This is my first full-length book. Before this first full-length book, I published 2 chapbooks. One is The Gardeners of Eden from the Chicano chapbook series, and published by Gary Soto. And the second is Aluminum Times, second chapbook, which had won a national contest. And I have examples of those books right at the tables if you want to take a look at them. Unfortunately, they're not on sale in this store. You could meet me in the back alley if you'd like a copy. But I want to, someone's texting me. They're like, good luck. Excuse me. Okay, what's up? So I want to read 3 poems from this book, The Date Fruit Elegies, and I want to read the poems that I feel will introduce me as a poet so you understand who I am, because I am relatively new resident to San Antonio. My family and I moved here 5 years ago, and in moving here, nobody knew who I was or who I am, and I probably still don't. So I want to read these 2 poems to introduce myself. The context for this first poem, called Aching Knees in Palm Springs, is that my father is a gardener, and he took us to work with him when we were kids, and so we worked with my dad when we were in high school. My 2 brothers and I worked with them during school vacations. Aching Knees in Palm Springs. One gray Thursday during winter break, Albert and I plucked patches of grass from petunia beds, wide as swimming pools within a condo complex. 1-story stucco blocks for old men who wipe sweat with dollar bills. We spent our school vacations in shivers, raking, trimming, and mowing frosted yards with a dad. At the 8th hour of kneeling, the weight on my knees was too much for me. For each fistful of grass, I stood up to stretch and let the cold air sneak under my shirt. Dad noticed the weeds slowly filling the can. He turned to me red-faced and said, "You're packing down the dirt. Kneel on the lawn and weed the beds from there." I said, "I am at least entitled to some circulation." I kept the truth from slipping past my chapped lips, how I didn't care about dirt and weeds from a bourgeoisie's garden. These few men I learned about in sociology class, who raked in more $100 bills than I did citrus leaves in a day. I wanted to tell Dad that these men didn't care if Mexicans spent 10 hours or even a lifetime weeding out the same bed the following week. To only tell him about the hours I felt wasted when we could have rested our sore backs on a bed and drowned in a lake of a much-deserved sleep, or sailed through Tierra del Fuego, us standing on the deck and never bowing, not even to the sun, or how he could have learned to read, and I would finally show him a poem I wrote. But I didn't, because I knew what he would say. It's the only way to put you through school, this oily sweat. I kept my tongue hidden behind my teeth and watched my brother, hunched over, tossing weeds and years inside a green plastic can without a word. So the second poem that I want to read is called Economics in Gemco. And I don't know if there's a Gemco here in Texas, but in the 80s, a Gemco in California was essentially like a Target or a Walmart. So I read this poem because it introduces my mother. My mother pushes a grocery cart. I tug at her blue pleated skirt. She puts her change into my hands for the old soul slumped against the wall, his gray mouth covered by a beard of wind and dirt. I place the coins into his cupped hands, and he stacks 2 neat columns of cents next to his seat on the curb. He nods his chin half solemnly. I turn back to mother. Suddenly, a cop, he came out of nowhere, tells me, "Take the money back." I brush the coins back into my palms like table crumbs as the old man, silent as those pennies, gets cuffed and hauled off to jail. I ask Mom, why? We only try to help. The cop says bums make $30 a week begging for change and are not too unhappy when arrested, since they get food, shelter, and a hot shower for at least a week. My mother pushes the grocery cart without a word, knowing that as newlyweds, she begged outside the markets for change, while Dad stole bread and sliced honey ham inside. The third poem I want to read from this book is called Spanglish as Experienced by a Native Speaker. And I guess, I have a few minutes here. I gave myself maybe 30 minutes to read, but I have like 25 minutes of thank yous. So I was going to intersperse thank yous in between. And I guess my first thank you is to Tony Diaz for letting me do my presentation here. I met Tony at Mokondo's Mokondo Writers Workshop in 2005. And, he was a very humble guy, and he still is. And man, his trajectory since meeting him just has really gone up as the Librotraficante and all the good work he does for us and our, lecturas. Spanglish as Experienced by a Native Speaker. This poem was the last poem I wrote for this book. I was about 26, and it was my response to the Adam Sandler movie called Spanglish. That really upset me that there would be an Adam Sandler movie called Spanglish. And so this was my response to that, and trying to reclaim Spanglish. Spanglish as experienced by a native speaker. A George Washington quarter was a quota. 2 quotas bought us una soda from a vending machine. We asked Abuelito for a quota to play the video game console. No, he said, una peseta, no una quota, una peseta para la máquina. He called the console a machine, like the machine, máquina, that dropped a quota for every 6 cans mother put in. La máquina is what father had us puchar across yardas on the weekends. At work, we ate lonche. At school, we ate lunch. At home, we ate both. Keiki was served on birthdays. It was bien gacho to have your birthday skipped again. Skipiar was done to the unsolvable math problem, which was never attempted again. Half our time was spent on homework, the other half was spent watchando TV. Wacha signaled you were about to do something impressive but foolish, like a bike stunt. Wachale is what your friends tell you when you nearly plowed into them with your bike. A bike is a bika. Uncle Jesse pedaled a bika to the grocery store to buy leche y cornflakes. Leche, not tortillas, were heated in the microwave. Un way is a dude. Uncle Beto called more than 2 people una bola de güeyes. I secretly listened to the Beastie Boys in Uncle Beto's troca because I could turn it up full blast. Uncle Jesse pedals back from Queimar with 2 new plaid shirts. Dad's returning from his trip to the Dompe, where he left last week's garbage. Mother's fixing Spam sandwiches. Abuelito pulls from his pocket a peseta, but hands me a quota. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I am going to start reading new poems from my second manuscript. And essentially, those who have known me know that I'm many years between books. And this grant has helped me give me a little push, a little accountability to finish the book. And I'm pleased to say that I put together my first rough draft of this manuscript. The person I'm really accounted to, sorry, City of San Jose, is my wife, Monica, sitting over there. And I will be giving her my thanks later. So I've put together a second manuscript called Biopic, and this is my rough cut of that manuscript. In the meantime, I'm going to read a poem called English as a Second Language, because my interest in poetry is always about language and the way the Mexican-American community uses language. So I'll be reading from this broadside. This broadside is free to anyone who asks for it. You don't have to buy a book to get one, okay? Or Sony's like, you just lost a bunch of sales, man. You tried, I know. But yes, English as a second language. And I wrote this poem exploring why my grandfather lived in the U.S. and died in the U.S. for about 50 years and never learned English. His vocabulary was limited to like cottage cheese and Superman, because he thought cottage cheese sounded like cara de chivo. So English as a second language. English as a second language. During my grandfather's sleep, a brujo whispers into his ear, to fasten English to the tongue, rinse your mouth with black coffee poured inside a gold chalice. Rattle of clay pots fishes grandfather from the dream pond, not the fault lines jostle nor aftershock. Emboldened, he rushes to the white man's market, hungered, barefooted for a cut of beef. Twigs, pebbles, and glass tacked to his soles like a sandal. He arrives to the meat counter. A carnicero flays strips of shoulder from a block of lamb. The butcher's apron smeared with vermilion petals. Here, only the tripas whisper the pig farmer's Spanish. The scent of dried, salted shrimp quivers the lining of his stomach. He struggles to muster his immigrant lexicon. He struggles to muster his immigrant's lexicon of malapropisms. Execute me, sir. His voice received as crackles of static. On this day in 1958, grandfather operates a tractor in the arid desolation of farmland. The oxen of wheels kick up dust particles into the atmosphere. Also, the sun slow roasts his arms, brown, the color of tender flesh kissed by gnats. Dusk, a cliff swallow tows a bow of lilacs across the horizon. Hunger, like English, like Mexico, is a honeycomb the bees have abandoned. In an anthology of unsettling dreams, the sun is worn on my grandfather's brazos like sleeves. Out there, dusk will carol for him in Spanish. Song of the sparrow, song of the cliff swallow. Thank you. Thank you. I probably started my second manuscript around the year 2006, and it was a very odd time. I was writing poems, but I was also going through quite a bit of anxiety, so a lot of that anxiety was seeping through my poetry. And it wasn't until many years later that my poems took a different turn. I found a new voice. I had to, that was after a while of having to relearn how to write poetry, even though I had an MFA, even though I had a book. And it was with this next poem that I found a new voice that I followed for the rest of the book. This poem is called My Calafia, and it is dedicated to my wife, Monica, who's sitting over there with our 2 children. And although a grant like this helps a writer, it's Monica has been, she's been my NEA grant, my Guggenheim, and my Whiting, and my Lannan, and my MacArthur all rolled into one. So I owe her so much. This is My Calafia. An hour into pruning in the rose garden of the rented bungalow, I forget my usernames and passwords, the balances across 4 credit accounts, my social security number, the country of my parents' birth. Wars as far back as 1848 never happened. I think about Juan Diego's Castilian roses tumbling from his tilma like a dozen jaguar hearts. The pink petals of my Calafia's lips, miraculous as an apparition on Tepayec Hill, when the blood rises to the surface of our kiss. Listen, is that the meadowlark or sage sparrow insisting on mealworms? Try again. Calafia descends the porch steps carrying a glass of ice water. A cucumber wheel floats to the surface. She deserves roses, fragrant as her nape, roses wilting at an open window when the bay breeze scatters the petals. A husband draws blood, excising such roses to honor the bud eye, the aphid-occupied leaf, Calafia whose belly will bloom like a spring floret. An hour into clipping, and I've already forgotten the sound of my accent, the devotion of my shadow, the thorn of first love. And thank you. Thank you. One of the things that I was interested in writing in the second book is the intersection of film and poetry, but rather interested in the myth making. But before I get to that, I guess one of my other ambitions in writing this book is has always been the interest in writing immigration stories, but not just immigration stories, unconventional immigration stories that people may not have heard of. This poem is, this version is new, like I wrote it yesterday. This poem I wrote a very long time ago, 10 years ago. And then I just rewrote it yesterday, and that's why it takes me so long to write poems, because I have to read these poems in front of you, and I cannot read bad poetry. That's like my nightmare, to read bad poetry. So it has to work. It has to work for me. I have to be proud of it. So this is called Overheard in San Jose. And if we were in San Jose, it'd probably make more sense. San Jose is home to the second biggest population of Vietnamese next to Vietnam. Overheard in San Jose. I left Vietnam. I left Vietnam with my uncle. I left Vietnam with my uncle on a raft he built. We made it to Indonesia. Indonesia didn't let us past their beach. Not just me and uncle either. The women stuck there on the beach took care of me too when uncle couldn't. I told them I was 7, but I was 6 on the craft. 7, they said, is a lucky number in America. Said, the luck is why pirates didn't find us, me and uncle. Said of themselves, if pirates had any humanity, they'd had fed us to the crabs. And so I want to read this poem called, page 15. So compare that poem to this one. I talked about this manuscript intersecting with film. So the title of this poem is taken from film, from screenplay language. Exterior, because this language sets up the scene. Exterior, border checkpoint, Falfurrias, Texas, day. I'm sure some of you have gone through that checkpoint going through the Rio Grande Valley. And I wrote this poem when I was teaching the Mayflower Papers by William Bradford, who was the former governor of the Plymouth colony. I watch a canine run its nose against the rear bumper of the Kia ahead in the inspection lane. Its bark starts fast, then slows down. Frosty in my cabin, I flake off the ice crystals from the tips of my arm hair. The driver of the Kia complies, steps out, unlatches the trunk, opening wide like a hippo's jowl. Do you know how a drinking straw rolls out when you tap a lever once? Drinking straw dispensers? A pilgrim rolls out like that. Literally a pilgrim, suited in a black coat, ruffled cuffs, a doublet like the pilgrim who follows, hat in hand soggy, sweat-licked hair flat across his crown, and the old man pilgrim who needs the aid of 2 men to steady himself. All of them pilgrims, whom the green uniforms unload one after another from the trunk like grocery bags. Hard as I try to discredit what I see, the scene unravels before me. Next, the lady pilgrim in the petticoat, with the coif crumpled like a $1 bill, hugging a dingy bundle of motel sheets. Just when I see it was not all motel sheets, but a child slack in her arms, the guard taps my window and waves me through. The next poem is called How Japan's Apocalypse Thwarted My Cousin's Dreams of Nursing School. Actually, one thing I want to say, one of the reasons I just read that Border Pilgrim poem that was dedicated to the Borderlands Shakespeare Collectiva, who were here, I think maybe last month. That's as close to a Shakespeare Borderland poem I'll get, is to have a bunch of pilgrims be snuck into the country. So this poem This poem is about my cousin, how Japan's apocalypse thwarted my cousin's dreams of nursing school. It's a prose poem. She thinks about how the name itself echoed a monster of the atomic age. Gojira, Megalon, Rodan, Fukushima. She thinks about the local television broadcasts, the jet streams whistling across the Pacific, the industrial-grade ventilators, the run on iodine tablets at suburban health stores. She thinks about the plume that can turn our faces into batter. Midnight, and she flees San Francisco and spring semester at City College in a Toyota four-door. In the air, a moon and a hint of eucalyptus. The static electricity in the clouds snaps like a rubber glove against the wrist. She thinks about her home in Southern California, its population of pink noses, the sun that turns palm tree leaves into gold scarves, safety under the avocado. A stride from the Junipero Serra freeway, hardly outside of the wind-wrecked city limit sign, a deer decided to leap. The Toyota clips its hind legs. When the highway patrolman arrives, his voice sounds like it's underwater. No carcass, he tells her. She gets out and looks at the fur and raspberry gel smeared on the grill. She feels dizzy and presses two fingers to her wrist. A pulse as erratic as hoofbeats circling the moon. So with that poem that took place in Northern California, and it's a story about Fukushima happening, the nuclear reactors, the nuclear power plants are like leaking radiation. And so one thing I forgot to ask is that before I moved to San Antonio, my family and I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area. So when we were in the Bay Area, the thought was that the radiation was going to travel to San Francisco and that part of the West Coast and essentially kill us or melt our face into batter. So there was a lot of panic. There was a run at like the Whole Foods for like iodine pills. But with that said, the last three poems, it's my interest in this new manuscript is, what ties the last three poems together is the theme of escape, and escape from ecological collapse, escape from geopolitical conflicts, and our geopolitical crisis, and economic crisis. Okay. Have to read this poem because this book took so long to read. I cover a lot of history events, and one of them is war, because we had a 20-year war, and now we have another war going on. And the thing about war is I hate war. I don't want war. But how can I write about war if I've never fought in battle? I feel that I'm not worthy of doing that. Longer story behind this poem, but the only way I felt I could approach writing about war was to take it personal and essentially write about growing up around war all the time, from childhood, the Cold War and Salvadorian Civil War and Kosovo War and Afghanistan War and Iraq War, now Ukrainian War, and now Israel and Hamas War. The Sound and Sergeant Fury. This has two titles: The Sound and Sergeant Fury, or The Onomatopoeia of Combat. Oh, boof of cannon fire and the badoom that follows. Oh, whoop from an RPG. Oh, whoop, whoop, whoop of the Black Hawk blades bending the raw light of dawn like straw. Oh, thock from a rifle butt, cracking the back of a skull. Oh, thump of the enemy's body collapsing over a stack of sandbags. Oh, brap, brap, oh, Buddha, 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 oh, Tara Brara, oh, M16's classic rat-tat-tat-tat. Oh, officer's pistol and its crack, 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 and the blam of a sidearm shooting a man point blank. Oh, patoosh, patoosh, oh, zing, clang, and wham. Oh, vip, vip, vip. Oh, Sergeant Fury, who drags a man's upper half out from a blast crater by his rucksack. Those howl for victory or air evac. Fury can't tell through all the Buddha bud, pow, pow. Thank you. Thank you. As I begin to wrap up my presentation here, I would like to read some what I call horror poems. Two of them are very short. And the horror poems, I was just very interested in, again, myth making, poetry as myth making, interested in schlock horror. The series of these poems are called direct to video, and this is those rip-off movies they make after something is a hit. Like I remember being like at a Best Buy and seeing a movie called Saturday the 14th. That movie was remade into The Hangover, because that's what Saturday 14th is to me. So a lot of horror is social commentary, so I was interested in that. These are shorts. If you cough, you will miss them. Direct to video, prime meridian of the living dead. Pass me those tendons and ligaments, floating ribs, fingers, and pinky toes. I didn't expect human flesh to taste so close to corn. See, I hope I have the other one. Oh boy, I'm like, where's the other one? Oh, sorry, I had spread them out in the manuscript. Just put this together. Oh, here it is. Okay, 17. It's there. Direct to video. The Texas Hacksaw Murders. I apologize, I wrote this when I was in California. But I knew Texas, I was here a lot. The Texas Hacksaw Murders. By the time I saw through this femur, the other liberals will have gone away. Chainsaws much faster. This last of the sequence, direct to video, I have two more poems left. Direct to video, work chop with a CHOP. Why that movie hasn't been made is beyond me. It's too perfect. Work chop. A maniac with a hatchet inside a messenger bag terrorizes a writing camp in the summer of '03. No longer stalking from the hollow, his awkward disposition allows him to blend in with the camp. He is given a room, a desk, a lamp, a bookcase. No one leaves their rooms the night he lies in wait. The maniac writes a poem for the next morning's workshop. He finds himself inside a classroom, surrounded. Hello, they say. Welcome to workshop. Each takes a stab at the maniac's poem. Cliches eviscerated, similes lacerated. The last line wrapped in a bow, chopped. Campers gather the scraps of paper, relish in a confetti toss. That night in his bunk, the maniac lay in agony. He takes his hatchet, amputates his hand above the wrist. He turns to the poet, the humble narrator of this tale. Not amputation, no, 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 no. Emancipation. This is my last poem, and because of it's such a special night sharing the stage with Dr. Norma Cantu, I wanted to dedicate this night to all the Chicanas who have propped me up as a poet, because so many Chicanas have. So I have a list. Number one, my wife, Monica Espinoza. Socorro Espinoza, that's mom. Sandra Cisneros, Diana Marie Delgado, Cecilia Bayi, Christina's sister. Natalia Trevino, Macarena Hernandez, the late Cecilia Burciaga, the widow of Jose Antonio Burciaga. And my late friend and poet Roxana Rivera, who perished while in her MFA program. And of course, there are Dr. Norma Cantu has been a huge help to me here, moving to San Antonio. This is my last poem, and so I probably already took Norma's time. This is called First Serpent Remembered. Subtitle, Abuelita on Opioids. I keep wanting to say Abuelita on steroids. Abuelita on opioids. One of the things that I want to do with this book is just turn expectations on their head. So Abuelita poems get ragged on a lot because they're often sentimental. Okay? Challenge accepted. First Serpent Remembered, Abuelita on Opioids. This is in her voice. Seize me the way the eagle seizes the serpent pinned to the yellow prickly pear. Watch how the eagle uses its beak to break into the body and pull a meal of pink cords. Deséchame así. This lust inside me writhes like Medusa's violent tangle of snakes. Crown me with a coiled asp. Worship me. The arc of volcanic ash I smear above your lip will make you a man, my fawning subject, my serf to my desires. Renounce all other gods and lovers. Finger my sin the way your thumb clears the coat of dust on grape skins. Handle me like jicama, and don't let me slip from your hands with the force of your bite. Inhale me. Inhale me like you do the unhung work shirt on cold mornings before the headlights of the pickup truck startle the hair back to the brittle bush. Bend at the musk of my groin. No soy nada si no soy the salt of the mouth's first serpent remembered. I quit picking cabbage. I'm 86. Send me home early or ravage me between the radish rows without the why, the when, or the hijuesu. Viejo, empuja tu lengua contra mi pescuezo. mis costillas, my landscape between scapulas como un cuchillo. Allow me this one bliss pinned to the spine of a dying prickly pear. I'm yours to be parted like a wedding cake. That's it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. That was fantastic. Again, that was the Date Fruit Elegies, poems by John Olivares Espinoza, some of his new work as well. After the next presentation, I want to remind you, you can go right next door and meet Alma, buy a copy of this book. I would encourage you to also buy a copy to give to an underground library, a public library, a teacher, or a friend. And I hope that you will replenish or build your family library with this as well. And don't forget, against my better advice, he's giving these away. So very generous of you. And this really is beautiful. So make sure that you take advantage of getting this so that it becomes part of your family library as well. And next up, thank you for the shout out for the Chicanas, because some of the Chicanas you mentioned, I'm so blessed that I know them. Shout out to the Chicanas in the room, including our director, the Chicanas in the room. And I say all that because next up is a very powerful Chicana who edited this amazing anthology. She is a legend, an icon in poetry, prose, scholarship. I think we're out of literary forms for you to master and conquer. But what is really impressive is that she is so generous with her brilliance. This anthology must form part of your family library. And this will transform education. The Chicana Portraits, Critical Biographies of 12 Chicana Writers, is going to change the way our gente are imagined in high schools, colleges, and community centers. We're so happy that the Latino Bookstore can play a role in launching this book and encourage your friends and family to come back and pick up their copies, but remind them that you beat them to the signed copies con la mera Norma Cantu, who's about to introduce some of the contributors in the room. Por favor, la mera.
Gracias, Tony. I begin by acknowledging the spirits of this place that is the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center and all the people who have worked here and labored for generations, even before we were born. I acknowledge our ancestors and ask permission for the work we are doing tonight. It is work that matters, what Ansaldúa urged that we do. It is really indeed an honor and a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank Cristina for imagining and having the space, and Tony for leading the monthly readings. It's amazing that now, 2 years later, it's still happening. And the many people who are tuned in now or later on Facebook, on live, gracias por estar aquí and gracias por escucharnos. It is my honor to introduce some of the contributors who are there. But before I go there, I want to honor and introduce my partner in crime. Without her work, we wouldn't have a book. Raquel Valles Diaz. Come on up. Raquel painted the portraits that are in the book, the actual paintings. And when she came to me and said, I want a book, or I want to somehow mantener estas obras, right? You didn't want to sell them, you wanted them to be out in the world at the same time. And she said, maybe a book. And I said, a book with 12 pages? Maybe not. So then we imagined what it would look like to have the book, the actual paintings, the portraits, in addition to the academic critical biographies or the other kinds of portraits. So we put it out there in the universe, and lo and behold, University of Arizona Press accepted our proposal and published it. And so we are co-authors of the book. Without her paintings, it wouldn't have happened, and without the scholars, it wouldn't have happened. So some of those scholars who wrote essays are here. And I'm going to go with, if I can remember the order, Carlos Flores wrote the essay on Raquel, because Raquel is also a playwright and a poet. And so, Carlos, you want to come up? We also have Esther. Where are you? There you are. Maria Esther Quintana, who wrote the essay on Ángela de Hoyos' beloved San Antonio poet. You want to come up here? And Jen Vargas Alanis, but I don't remember your full name. Yanez, that's the one. I always forget that middle last name. So Jen wrote the amazing biography of Dr. Carmen Tafoya, who is also here. Carmen, you can come up here too. So each one of us is going to say a few words, and then that will be launching our book. We don't have time to do like a full-fledged analysis of all the different, there's 12 authors. But believe me, when you read them, you get to know the author, not just the work, but the life. It's very much about the life of the author as well as the work. And so I'll start with Carlos, or maybe Raquel, you want to go first? You want to say a few words?
Ladies first. Well, this came about, I don't know why. I mean, I didn't intend for this to ever happen. I started painting the Chicana writers in the 90s, I think. And I just did it because I admired them, and that's the only reason, really. And I never thought that it would come to this, and that this book would be published, and to give more power to the Chicana writers, which is what I would like that to always happen. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. What can I say, except that, well, I'm very privileged to be the only man included in the anthology. In fact, after Norma, mine is the first essay. And the reason for that is that all this began, for me at least, and Norma, and Raquel, for one reason. That is, she and I became very good friends many years ago when she came into my class. I was teaching along with the playwright Carlos Morton at Laredo Community College. And when she first showed up, sat in front of me, well, I said, you know, what is she doing here? She belongs in the beauty salon. But she stuck with it. I mean, she really did. And I'm very proud to say that I edited and it made and got published her first. I didn't publish, but I got Ángela de Hoyos, right? And Moises, her husband, to publish her first book, Soy Como Soy Que. And I'm very pleased to say that I was able to edit that. And so one thing led to the other, and before long, she started painting, you know, these pictures. And I said, wow, this is really going to be a classic. And it is. This book is a classic. And one of the reasons one of the things I want to say, I'm very proud to be able to say that Laredo, Texas, which is where I'm from, and many of us tonight are from there, are very pleased to be able to make this contribution, you know, to this cultural development. I, for one, have always admired and envied, you know, the cultural development in San Antonio. And I wish I could have participated more extensively, but, you know, distance is an issue. So anyway, what else can I say except, and of course, Norma, you know, who has become such an icon here, is from Laredo, and she and I are fellow travelers for many, many years. So anyway, thank you very much. Congratulations to everybody, and thank the Guadalupe Cultural Center, Ms. Bayi, and everybody that's made this possible. Oh, and Tony, let me not forget Tony Diaz, and Tony Diaz.
I get stage fright when I speak in English because it's not like mother tongue. So I wrote, I just want to read the first part because it took me like 5 hours to write it. No, and no kidding. I mean, I'm being completely honest. First of all, I want to thank you for being here, despite of all the social networks competing to rob us of our present time. As a literary scholar and an aspiring creative writer, it is encouraging for me to address a live audience. To write can be a lonely, intense, and painstakingly slow endeavor, a fierce battle with language, especially if that language is not the writer's mother tongue. When the work is done, there comes an incredible sense of accomplishment that is impossible to describe. And this is the moment when the writer dreams of the day when she will see her manuscript in print. This is what I felt when I finished co-writing with my colleague Magdalena Guerra de Charur the chapter entitled Ángela de Hoyos, a poet-artist. As I hold Chicana portraits in my hands, it is incredibly special to share this moment, thank you, this moment with you, our community of readers. Secondly, I want to express my gratitude to Norma Cantu and to Raquel Valle Centillas for allowing me to have been part of this wonderful project. Chicana Portraits is an important endeavor as it honors the lives and accomplishments of 12 outstanding Chicana authors and visual artists. Beyond their different upbringings, worldviews, sexual orientation, spiritual beliefs, class, and education, all of these writers have in common their belief in imagination as a powerful instrument to transcend patriarchal and stereotypical representations and roles imposed upon Chicanas. With this regard, philosopher Catriona Mackenzie argues that intentional imagination promotes self-reflection, and thus it helps women escape from cultural repertoires that limit their self-knowledge and distort their self-concept. Thus, the writings of Chicana authors are performative as they create their own personae, while they also envision intimate and social relationships liberated from heterosexual norms. Additionally, their books imagine a world without discrimination against Chicanx in general, a world where Mexican Americans are treated with respect. As Gloria Saldúa affirms in Borderlands, La Frontera, nothing happens in the real world unless it first happens in the images in our heads. Amen. Nevertheless, although imagining is the first step to transform the world, activism is a dynamic practice equally necessary to bring about social change. On this subject, all writers in Chicana Portraits have been engaged in some form of activism, either by working with undocumented Central American immigrants, such as Norma Cantu, by organizing poetry and writing readings in their barrios, like Sandra Cisneros, by marching in protest to support farm workers, as it was the case of Ángela de Hoyos, or by publishing new Chicana poets, again, Ángela de Hoyos. Beyond these specific instances of activism, the simple act of writing about disenfranchised people is another form of activism, as Sandra Cisneros told a group of 300 students at Westside School in 2021. This form of activism aims at empowering oppressed people by depicting strong characters succeeding in life despite all odds. Their stories challenge the status quo, while their authors denounce the historical discrimination, injustice, and marginality inflicted on Chicanese. And I'm just going to summarize pretty quickly. Malena, my colleague, and I wrote on Ángela de Hoyos. She was born in Mexico, but she lived most of her life in San Antonio. She was a trailblazer woman, and she was a Renaissance woman. She was a writer, she was a musician, she was a visual artist, and she excelled in all of this artistic facets. Of course, I'm most interested in on her literary aspect, on her poetry, which is really superb. She was an excellent poet. She was a bilingual poet, and she used bilingualism in her poetry in a masterful way. So Malena and I tried to honor her life and also her obra in all of her facets. And I encourage you to read her poetry, to go to the site by Arte Público online, and you can see her paintings, her visual art, and also her poetry. And I'm pretty sure that you are going to appreciate her poetry and her visual art as much as we do. So thank you very much for being here. And lastly, I'd like to extend my gratitude to my son, Adrian, who is here. He's my editor. He's my editor. And also to my son, Bear, who's here too. Thank you. And my husband, Bertin, they inspire me each day to be a better person. Thank you, guys. Love you.
So first of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me to be a part of such a powerful collaboration. You cannot imagine what I was feeling when I got that first email from Dr. Cantu inviting me to collaborate. And then especially to be writing about Carmen Tafoya, Dr. Carmen Tafoya, who is my mentor. And so I didn't prepare anything formal to say, but I will say this. I had been spending about 2 years with Dr. Tafoya before I started the critical bio. And I have lots of photos just sort of following our adventures together over those last 2 years, and little notitas that I would make. And I had a lot of access to Dr. Tafoya, so I was very, very blessed to be able to write from such a personal experience with her. And I wrote the critical bio at the onset of the pandemic. And so we were all in a state of crisis at that time. And we were all so separated from everything. You know, although we were close to our families, we were separated from the communities that we were used to being with, and there was so much missing in our lives. And so for me, thinking about how I was going to approach the writing, I decided to spend some time with Dr. Tafoya, and we would sit together in her parlor, social distance, with our masks on, and I'd have my little notebook, and we spent hours having conversations. And so I tried not to ever interrupt her flow of consciousness as she spoke through her memories. And you know, sometimes her memories, sometimes her dreams, sometimes her imaginations. And in addition to that, I had been witness to watching her process in her writing, watching the way, you know, the tiniest of scribbles became these alive, you know, just essences of giving. And I would get to hear her, you know, read her poetry for the community. And so I was so blessed to have this multi-layered experience with Dr. Tafoya. And in addition to, you know, she had just retired. And that in itself was a huge change that was happening in her life. And at the same time, she was also starting to think about dating. And boy, oh boy, did we have fun. Dating in digital times. And so I got to think about a lot of her ways of being a passionate, sensual human. And especially because of the pandemic, I felt like I needed to be in that passionate, sensual space in my process. And so I went through and I thought about the characters that she brought to life for us. And I thought about some of the most, the characters that had some of the most transformative spaces and the most, empowered spaces. And that was really important for me as well, to sort of follow the trajectory of those empowering voices in transition and transformation. And that's how I designed the critical biography. And so I'm really excited about it. So it's basically, it's pretty sensual, it's pretty sexy, and it's pretty romantic, and it's pretty beautiful, and it's pretty powerful. And I'm really happy that we're able to share this with you. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. I do want, not often do you have the subject of the biographies there. So Carmen, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you, but it's kind of a funny way to start because the reason you usually don't have them there is because they're usually dead. And I just want to start this by saying I'm not dead yet. But I am going to take you back many decades because this work has really taken many decades to happen, not just in the lives and the work of the people represented in there, but in the envisioning of this book. I'll never forget when I first saw Raquel Valles and Diaz's portraits. In case you haven't figured it out, the Chicana Portraits book doesn't just have the critical bios, it has these images of the oil portraits which she painted of significant writers. And when I saw them, there was something that went deeper than just, they weren't just photographs. They weren't just, you didn't just see the face. It's kind of like she pulled the fire out of the person in each of the portraits. She captured something of that personality. Yeah. And so I was very, very moved by her work and very, very grateful to her and to Dr. Cantu and to all of the writers who wrote the individual bios for pulling this book together at this time, because we hear so much about Chicano movement, Chicano movement, Chicano movement, and all the descriptions are all about who protested when and who walked out when, and not much attention is paid to the role of the arts, especially the writers. And to me, the writers were what made the Chicano movement really happen, because it was a concientización. It was an awakening of awareness. It was something that made people believe that the system could be changed. And so I always felt that there would have been no Chicano movement if there wasn't a Chicano literary movement, and there would be no Chicano literary movement if it hadn't been for the Chicana writers who kind of jabbed and pushed and demanded that it go beyond where it was, that it go to full liberation. And so I'm very grateful that this book exists, and I feel very proud and humbled to have been in it. And I feel very lucky to have been in it. I just think that it's a good thing they chose 12 and not 3 or 4, because it made it a little easier. And just muchas gracias, Norma. This was an incredible academic, artistic, and algo espiritual también.
Definitely. Definitely algo espiritual, because it was, any book has a life of its own. And this book particularly was difficult to birth, because of so many factors, the pandemic notwithstanding. Everything else that happens to make a book happened. I mean, there were all kinds of delays, but not one of the writers that I asked to write critical biographies said no. They all quickly agreed. Then it took a long time to get them written, but they did it. And it was kind of threading or weaving something together, because how do you organize it? One of the first decisions I had to make, how do I put all these essays together? And I thought, well, alphabetically, nah. So I ended up doing it chronologically, because I hope it is used, like Tony was saying, in schools. It is a chronicle of Chicana literature, starting, of course, with Raquel's, but also with Ángela de Hoyos, who was instrumental in getting many people published here in San Antonio, but elsewhere as well. People were writing to her from all over to publish in her revistas and in her, like the one you have. She had some of these broadsides, thank you, that's the word, even in the prisons. And I remember one friend of mine in Laredo, her son got arrested, teenager, was doing dope or something, and he read a poem by Ángela de Hoyos on a broadside, and it just kind of awakened him. So the power of those broadsides is incredible, and Ángela was out there doing the work. Yes, that's the one. She put it everywhere, and it was a beautiful poem. Thank you so much for reading and for your careful analysis of what you were doing with the book. Malena was at the Laredo reading where we were, and she also talked about that. Yes. Did you want to say something? Or?
I'm not going to make you speeches, but
Okay.
I just want to let you all know that I'm a late bloomer. And
it's never too late.
I was in my late 50s when I first started taking poetry and painting classes at LCC, and never expected any of this to happen. I was doing it for me because I loved all that and I just wanted to do it. And I'm still here.
And still painting and writing.
I hope to be here a few more years, maybe 2 or 3 more, to enjoy all this.
Gracias, Raquel, for all the work that you've done over the years. In here, I chronicle also in my introduction.
My first teachers in poetry, right?
Yeah, it was a creative writing class at in Laredo. But she had a cafe, and we would gather there and read poetry to each other and invite writers. We had conferences, Letras en el Borde, where the Mexicano poets would come and the U.S. poets would come, and we would all gather at the cafe.
And I had the first Latino bookstore.
Yes.
In the state and in Laredo.
That's right. It was called Café del Barrio. Muy bien. Questions? I'll open it up now for anybody who has a question or a comment. Oh, okay. Nadie? Yeah.
How long did it take you to get started? I mean, from the moment that you got the track to get everybody together? How long was it from beginning to?
Well, actually, the portraits were only 10. And so I asked Raquel for more. And she painted one of herself because she had not included herself. And by the way, in academic tradition, you can, as editor, I'm in here. But usually if you do an anthology of creative writing and you're a poet, you don't put yourself in there. So that was kind of one of the hurdles. Like, am I going to put myself in there? Well, the portrait is there. And Dr. Gabriela Gutierrez Simuz, I think she's watching on the Facebook thing, wrote the biography from me. So at that point, we started, I don't know, 3 years, you think it took? About 3 years. It took a year for the press to do it after we turned it in. But it took about 2 years of gathering the essays and for her to finish painting the other two portraits. Who was the other one that you did?
Well, the other
The last two. You don't remember? The first one was Sandra. Or me?
Yeah, Sandra, and you were the second.
Okay, yeah. Sandra Cisneros' portrait was the first, and I was the second, and then it went like that. There was no rhyme or reason. They were just coming, and she would paint them. Gloria Anzaldua's portrait is here, Chiri Moraga. Gosh, I should go. Ana Castillo. I'll just read him. Raquel Valles Sentíes, Ángela de Hoyos, Montserrat Fontes, a novelist from Laredo. People really don't know about her, and she's got these beautiful novels set in Laredo. And she lives in California. She was a high school teacher over there and was writing the whole time. Gloria Anzaldúa, myself, Denise Chavez, Carmen Tafoya, Cherry Moraga, Ana Castillo, Lorna Di Cervantes, Sandra Cisneros, and Demetria Martinez. So you can see that it's a mix. They're not all poets, they're not all novelists. It's just whatever struck your fancy. And the other thing that I learned from Raquel is that the painting itself was difficult on some level, especially if she did not know the person. So the portraits of Sandra and Denise, and I think myself, you know us, so it's a little different. Carmen, you know well. But the ones where there was people she didn't know or who had passed on, they were a little more difficult to execute. On the other hand, the critical biographies, many of these scholars have written dissertations on these topics. One of the youngest, Megan Solomon, who wrote about Ana Castillo, I just happened to be on her dissertation committee, and I saw she was writing about Ana, and so I asked her, would you like to write this? And she said yes. She was finishing her dissertation. She took the time to write the essay. So it's just the gamut from very established critics like Lourdes Torres, who wrote about Cherry Moraga, to Megan, who just started. She's an assistant professor right now in Georgetown at Southwestern. So it just, whoever serendipitously, spiritually was led to be here. And yes, Carlos is the only man in here. But we have another essay by a professor scholar from Spain who wrote another essay about Raquel's artwork. And that's also really good. Yes. How do you aspire to become an author? That's a good question. How do you aspire to become an author? I can tell you, I was about your age when I was writing. I'm the oldest of a lot of children, and I was writing poems about my brothers and sisters, and not always nice.
I come from a family that talks a lot, and they're always telling stories. And at night, that was what we did, was tell stories. And so we heard all kinds of stories. Fíjate que la señora que vivía en esa casa por allá se murió hace como unos 20 años y la enterraron, y después de enterrarla se oía en el ataúd cada noche. And these are the stories we were told. It was La Llorona, it was El Cucuy, but it was everything else. And every house and every person, every family had a story with them. So you were scared to ask, wow, that's a really old house. How come nobody lives there? Ay, mija, había una muchacha que bailó con el diablo. So everything would turn into a story. So I grew up with stories, and it was kind of something that someplace around 9 years old, for some reason, I got this crazy idea. I saw on TV somebody was a writer. She had a typewriter, and she would write these stories. It just stuck in my head that the stories that we talked about could go on paper. And ever since then, I kind of wanted to put those stories on paper.
Jen is also a writer, a poet. She just published her Surrogate Eater. It's a collection that's out there for sale. So Jen, do you want to say a few words?
So regarding how I was inspired to be a writer, I was also very young, and I also used to love to write stories. And also, my mom was a teacher or an educator, so I kind of had to do a lot of writing and reading. But probably the most important thing is that my dad was a musician and a songwriter, and he really, really inspired me. Thank you. Thank you.
Carlos Flores, who's also a novelist. Do you want to say how you get inspired? How do you get inspired to be a writer?
Well, to be honest with you, the minute I heard that question, I just wanted to tell you, well, first you have to expire. That's a stupid remark, right, on my part. Basically, well, it's true though, because when I started writing, I mean, I had no intentions. I was going to be a medical doctor. Okay, that was my original plan, or a research scientist. And then my life fell apart due to a lot of issues at home that were unresolved, and I kind of like I needed to find I needed to find answers to my situation, you know, in high school. And so then one day I read a book by a Russian author named Crime and Punishment, and that changed my mind about everything. I said, oh, okay, so there are people out there that know what's going on in the world, right? So if that's what writing is all about, and then if these dead writers are the ones that have a lot of answers, then that's what I'd rather just spend my entire life doing. And then there's another thing though, and that is that once you start living in the world of fiction, in the world of literature, the world of the imagination, because the world in which you're living is for some reason rather very defective or insufficient, then what happens is this: you want to talk to the dead writers like Dostoevsky. So how do you talk to a dead writer? Right? How do you do that? By writing a book. And I'm pleased to say, by the way, that hopefully in the next year or so, I have 3 new books coming out. And I hope to be back again here one day. Thank you. God bless.
When I was your age, I loved to sing. So I will sing in my living room, you know, in my parents' living room. And then I started writing songs in my mind. And then my sister, she's much older than me, she gave me the first books of literature. So I started reading literature. So I started writing poems, you know, little poems. And then I guess when I grew up, I just wanted to be a literature teacher. I wanted to teach literature. And then I switched to just writing critical essays, and that's what I do now. But I'm writing a novel about my grandfather, who was Japanese. You know, I know nothing, almost nothing about him. So I'm basically imagining everything about my grandfather. So it's I'm reading about 100 pages, and yeah, it's what I'm doing right now.
Like I said, I'm not very good at making speeches, but I was just remembering, I think I fell in love with reading in the first place, with Dick and Jane. And after that, it was reading. Now, it may not be right, but I don't think you can be a writer without loving to read. And so that's the way it happened. And my essays at high school and college were always good essays, and but it never, you know, occurred to me that I would be writing and that people would like what I wrote. When then I got married and went to live in Veracruz in Mexico for a long time. Then I come back and set up a business also. And so I've been doing so many things that this came, I think, finally something that I really, really love to do. And I thank God for that.
Muchas gracias to everyone. It really, by the way, we did not plan it, but we're all wearing rebosos. Except Carlos. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to hang out for a little bit on books. Just come up and talk to us. Tony?
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was brilliant. That was fantastic. I'm going to model some positive behavior. So if you go next to the next room, you go to Alma, very good, and you'll purchase your copy of each book, maybe more than one copy, and then you'll go over there and get them signed, and they will take part in your family library. Thank you all, and we'll see you next second Friday of the month. Gracias.